You know, sometimes the most cutting-edge ideas in golf, well, they aren't new at all. Today, we're going to talk about an innovation that seems totally modern, but its story actually starts almost 100 years ago with one of the biggest legends in the game. Let's dive into the forgotten origin of single-length irons.
First up, the modern game changer. To really get this story, we've got to start with the guy who dragged single-length irons right into the modern spotlight.
I mean, who else could it be, right? Bryson DeChambeau. You know him as the scientist. And when he burst onto the PGA Tour with this totally radical idea of having every single iron cut to the same length, man, it didn't just turn heads, it completely flipped the script on how we talk about golf equipment.
DeChambeau's logic is just so simple, it's powerful. He says, look, simplify the variables. If you have one club length, you get one setup, one ball position, and just one swing. In theory, it's the ultimate shortcut to finding consistency in a game that's anything but consistent.
Okay, but here's where the story gets really interesting. What if I told you this whole revolutionary idea, the super scientific approach, wasn't new at all? What if the real pioneer was a master of the game way before anyone had even heard of a launch monitor?
That brings us to part 2, a legend's forgotten secret. To find the real beginning of this idea, we have to jump in a time machine, back to a moment when a golf legend was on the verge of doing the impossible.
The year is 1930. We're in the golden age of golf, and one man is about to do something that will cement his place in history forever.
That man, of course, was Bobby Jones. In a single calendar year, he won the British Amateur, the British Open, the US Open, and the US Amateur. It's a feat that has never, ever been repeated. And guess what? He did it with a very unique set of clubs.
So Jones gets together with Spalding, the equipment company, and they cook up this custom set of irons. And the key thing was there was barely any difference in length between them. The whole point was to get a consistent swing weight, a consistent feel, so he could use pretty much the exact same setup and swing for every single shot. Think about that. This wasn't about crunching numbers. It was an artist, a master, searching for that perfect, repeatable feel.
So almost 100 years before Bryson DeChambeau, here's Bobby Jones, chasing the exact same dragon, trying to get rid of variables to find consistency when it matters most. The tech was different, sure, but the philosophy? It was identical.
Which brings us to a big question in Section 3, the lost decades. If this concept was proven at the highest level back in 1930, why on earth did it just vanish for decades?
So after Jones, you'd think this idea would take off, right? Nope, it just went quiet for almost 60 years. Then, in 1989, Tommy Armour gave it a shot. They released their EQL irons, trying to bring the concept to everybody, but it was a total flop. The market just wasn't ready for it. So, through the 2000s, the idea survived only in these little corners of the golf world, with niche brands catering to curious amateurs. It wasn't until 2015, when this young physics whiz named Bryson DeChambeau wins the US Amateur using them, that the idea finally explodes back into the spotlight.
Okay, part 4, the science of one swing. Now that we've got the history, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Why does this actually work? And, what are the trade-offs?
Okay, think about a normal set of irons. You're always making these little tweaks, right? Changing your posture, moving the ball position, adjusting your swing for every single club. Single length just throws all of that out the window. You find one setup you're comfortable with, usually based on a 7-iron, and you just repeat it. That's it. From your 4-iron all the way down to your wedge, the feel and the swing thought are the same.
The beauty is all in the simplicity. Just imagine going to the range and practicing one golf swing for your irons instead of 8 or 9. That's the whole promise. For a lot of golfers, this just makes learning so much faster. It helps you find the middle of the club face more often, which means your shots are grouped tighter and you have a swing you can actually trust when you're feeling the pressure.
But hey, let's be real, it's not some magic bullet for everyone. There are definitely challenges. For one, making your 4-iron shorter could mean less club head speed, and that might cost you some distance. And then on the other side of the bag, a pitching wedge that's the same length as a 7-iron, that can feel, well, kind of weird, and it might launch the ball way higher than you want. Now, modern club makers are smart. They work around this stuff with special weighting and tweaking the lofts to make sure you still have good distance gaps between your clubs. But it's a really careful balancing act.
All right, Section 5, a century of consistency. Let's tie this whole thing together, connecting this 100-year story from the artist to the scientist.
So the whole journey of single-length irons really starts with Bobby Jones, the artist, who just knew intuitively that consistent tools would lead to consistent shots. And it comes full circle with Bryson DeChambeau, the scientist, who took that same principle and proved it all over again with modern data.
You can literally trace the history right here. It all kicks off with Jones's insane Grand Slam in 1930. It pops back up with Tommy Armour trying to sell it to the masses in '89, and then it's finally validated when DeChambeau wins the U.S. Amateur in 2015, which led to that huge partnership with Cobra Golf.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that single-length irons are not a fad. They're not some flash-in-the-pan gimmick. This is a legitimate, time-tested idea. I mean, it was first proven by maybe the greatest amateur player who ever lived, and then reproven a century later by one of the most forward-thinking pros in the game today.
And that just leaves you wondering, doesn't it? If an idea this powerful could stay hidden in plain sight for almost 100 years, what else is out there? What other game-changing ideas are just tucked away in the history books, waiting for the right person to dust them off and bring them back into the light?